Good evening. This is 2020 Church, and I'm Pastor Larry Enriquez. Well, glad to be with you again here this week, and we're going through the Gospel according to Mark, and we're here in this really unique place in the Gospel, Mark 4 and 5, because we enter into this realm that's very intriguing and in some ways mysteriously awe and ooh, and that's the world of demons and the occult. And we find that through the life of Jesus, it's just a real part of the world and life. And I'm not too sure it's any different today. It's just different, and it expresses, the demonic world expresses itself differently. It's easier for us to discount things as being science. In other words, oh yeah, we label that as schizophrenia or schizoid or dual personality. We have terms that make it science, human, and it may very well be that, but let's not rule out that part of those diseases may very well be partly demonic, or sometimes totally demonic, and sometimes it's just a broken brain. I get that, but I don't get it because it's very hard to tell. As I've stated before, I believe I have, is that in my life experience as a pastor and as a longtime police chaplain, that I've been called out and on scenes that I'm thinking, boy, there's demons involved in this somewhere or somehow, and as a counselor to be in the presence of someone who can very well be demonic, but it's very hard to tell the difference because you're looking at the face of and in the eyes of someone who's 5150 in the hospital, and you're speaking to them is labeled as being, on some drug or some medication or off medication. So they're schizophrenic, they're bipolar, they're whatever they're labeled. And the thing is that sometimes we're looking into the eyes of, demonic presence. I don't know how to always tell the difference. But one thing I do know, the demons are real because I believe fully in the scriptures. The scriptures testify to their presence, to their influence of both nations, cultures, and individuals. So here in the Gospel according to Mark, we have this interface of demons and Jesus. Now, we'll get to this in just a moment. We're going to read the last part of Mark chapter 4 and go into the first part of Mark chapter 5. They're both going to reflect demonic expressions in different ways. And we'll go through them quickly, but just to keep our eyes and ears aware and open to the strength of Christ in the midst of a world that is full of demonic expressions. Wars and the terrible things that men do to men are oftentimes backed by demonic presence or demonic entities. And I'm not saying that everybody who's involved with the war is being influenced by demons, but oftentimes a war is propagated by evil forces in the human heart, in the human culture, in the nation. And that's a given in my opinion, and not just mine. So let's go to Mark chapter 4 and read about Jesus calming the storm that again reflects demonic presence in the very storm itself and in the fear of those with Jesus. I want to also say that we sing a song, I forgot the name of it, and in the song it testifies to the fear that the demonic world experiences when it's confronted by Jesus. the fear that is exemplified in the demonic world because Jesus is there, because Jesus is here. So greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. This Christ. The demonic world fears Christ. So we oughtn't be fearing demonic existence, but we ought to be respecting what it is, but walking courageously because Christ is in us. And Christ is the Lord of everything. Let me read to you now. That day, when evening had come, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him, and a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Now, I have taught this passage before, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this part of the world and this part of this lake that is called a sea, but we want to focus on something else. But one is that Jesus is calm, and I would just want to reflect to you that if Jesus is calm, we ought to be calm. If Jesus is excited, we ought to be excited. So we want to play on that. I would think that if we're in a boat or on anything that is transporting us somewhere, I would keep looking at Jesus when the water rose, when the wind blew, when the turbulence came. I would look at the face of Christ and go, okay, how is he responding? How is he acting? That would be a measure for me. I watch baseball, and every once in a while, you see a ball that's hit well into the outfield. And someone's going, "Oh, that's over the fence." But I'll look at the face of the outfielder who is again looking at the ball from a different position that I'm in. And if he's looking in such a way that he's going to catch the ball, I can tell by looking at his face. And I'm thinking, nope, it ain't going over the fence. It's going to go into his glove. Look at him. He's not excited about that. When I look at an outfielder who's running towards the fence and you see him looking up, looking down, looking up, looking down, and trying to feel the fence with his hand, I'm thinking, this is going to go over the fence. You tell by looking at the expression of the one who's going to receive the ball. So, in life, I want to look at the expression of God himself, the Lord. Go, what's his expression here? What's he doing here? And really gauge my mindset on looking at the face of Jesus so that we live a life that isn't being motivated or empowered by fear and stress, but by faith in Christ whom we serve. So Jesus gets up, he's calm. I think that the expression of the disciples is very telling. They go, "Don't you care?" Of course Jesus cares. No one cares more than him. I think that would rattle him. So he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Now, why does Jesus do that? Because waves have a brain? No, I believe that because there's a demonic expression or entity, rather, behind the storm that has come. Not every storm is being propelled by demonic forces, but I believe in this case it is. Can he just command nature? Sure he can. But I think that in the context of all of this, there's demonic expressions being revealed here, and he's speaking to that. The disciples woke. Don't you care? He rebukes the wind and the waves. Be still. The wind dies and everything calms. His disciples say that the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? In the Greek, that word, why are you so afraid? It's a word that says, why do you act cowardly? That could be a translation. Or why do you act so timidly or stressed to the degree that it makes you cower? That would be a good way to, I think, emphasize this Greek word or this kind of fear. It's not phobos or phobos. It's a word that says, why do you act in this timid fashion, in this cowardly fashion, this being promoted by the stress of the circumstance or what's happening? And then it says, after he says, why are you so afraid? Why do you act out this way? You're with me. They were terrified and asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Who is this? It says they were terrified. That's a different Greek word for fear. The phobos. It's like terror. It's respectful, but it's terror. So it's this reality of one fear being greater than the other. It's like when they actually heard Jesus command the waves and command the wind, we find that there is some authority in the words of Jesus, in his face, in his expression, in all of that. I just have to say that something's happening there to the extent that they say, the Bible tells us that they were terrified of who they then could see who Jesus is. That he's this person who has this command, this authority in life. That even Mother Nature, and again, Mother Nature, in my opinion, being fueled here by demons, but that Mother Nature, the wind and the waves obey him. Let's fear him more so. We'll do a study, I think we're going to do on Sundays, but on the fear of what it means to fear God. But I think they got a taste of it here. Okay. Now, we go on to chapter 5 of Mark. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. By the way, I realize that to most of you, these are very familiar passages. So may we be reminded of the kind of parables they are to our own lives. Fear and what we're most afraid of and what we should only be afraid of. And our need to recollect our lives and to put our fear in the right place, in God, not in anything else. When they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. Let me tell you that we find that when there's demonic presence in the place of a human soul, accompanied with that in every experience of my own life, and I think in the biblical narratives, is this devaluing of human life. There's always some degree of filth, dirt, or disgust in the situation that they're in. When I have been around various people in my life that I felt maybe were in a condition that was being demonically influenced, if not present, there was always some measure of human filth or degradation. Their hair would be matted and unwashed. Their skin would be, their teeth, their eyes, their clothing, where they slept, where they lived, what they ate. Here we have someone in a in the region of a cemetery. We find that he's, where the corpses lie. He's among the tombs. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. He kind of even he took on, every once in a while, like in the field of policing, you'll come across someone who is extraordinarily strong, and we realize that they're on some drug that creates this superhuman thing. And demons can create that too. By the way, I think I despise drugs, and drugs have destroyed so many people's lives, and so many young people's lives, and distorted so much of America. I just don't like songs or movies that in any way glorify some form of taking drugs, because I think it's too real. Too many people are destroyed by them. There's nothing good about them other than they're calculated and manipulated by physicians to help you get through injuries or an operation. But drugs as we know them out on the street are just terrible. So he's like a drugged out human being in the filth of his own life, reflected in the life or in his habitat of among the tombs. And part of the parable here, though it's a real story, but the reflection is he's living in squalor, and he's living among or in the presence of death, which is very demonic. And he had been chained, but could no longer be chained. It says they had fetters. Now, I grew up with horses as well, and we would put a horse in a ring or out to graze. We'd oftentimes put hobbles or fetters on the forelocks of the horses, just above the hooves, and it was two leather pieces with a chain that didn't allow the horse to fully stride or run. So it kept them bound to walk and graze the grasses without running off. And that fetter, those were called fetters. It keeps you from moving at your own pace away. They used to put this on this man, but his strength would tear it apart along with chains. This is demonic possession. And night and day, he would cry out in screeches, I'm assuming, in the filth of his own body and lack of hygiene, as demons want to destroy the human body, the human soul, the human. Demons want to destroy the image of God in God's creation, in all of his creation, in particular in the human creation. But when he sees Jesus, that is, this man who's demonically possessed, he sees him from a distance. But he runs and he falls in front of Jesus. And then he screeches, he shouts. In the Greek, he shouts, he screams out, Son of the Most High God. By the way, that's a term often used in the Old Testament that was used by El Elyon. It's a term used by the non-Jew to proclaim the God of the Jew. The Jew would call him Jehovah or Yahweh. He was their Lord, but they would call him this very, Son of the Most High God, the Most High God, the Most High God. That's what the demons call Jesus. In God's name, don't torture me. The demonic world is afraid of Jesus. And that's the big point here. Sometimes we get lost. Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Jesus is the one who holds all things together, all the universe, everything created, here and there, holds together by the very power of Christ, so that demons fear him. The darkness fears him, because wherever Christ goes, it's light. They shout out at the top, the man shouts out at the top of his voice, empowered by demons, not just a demon. What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me. They know that Jesus can, and one day they will all be tortured as those who will be thrown into the fires of hell. Are they saying, is this now the time? Whatever it is, they know the power of God in Christ and the power of Christ to punish them. And they cry out to Jesus this way. For Jesus had said to him, come out of the man, you impure spirit. Then Jesus asked him, what is your name? And here we get a sense of the depth of what demons can do to a soul. My name is Legion, he replied, for we are many. Creep out. But Jesus is greater. The lead vocalist of this demonic horde within this human soul says, Jesus, are you here to torture us? Command us in some way where you have mercy on us, is what they'll end up saying, because that's the power of Christ. Not over one powerful demon, but a horde, a legion of demons. This is the Christ. Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them. He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out. By the way, they only move according to his permission. This is the Jesus, the Christ, whom we love and serve, our Lord, our Master. This is the Christ. He's my Christ, and he's yours, or can be yours. This one who is greater than all the demons. He sends them into the pigs, the herd, about 2,000 in number. So it gives you an idea of how many demons are present. I can't fathom this, only that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of demons infested in this man. And they enter. Was there only 100, 200, and they entered 100 and 200 pigs, but all the rest of the pigs followed those pigs? I don't know. But it tells us that there are thousands of pigs. It says here that there are 2,000 in number. How do they know this? Because there's somebody who owns them, and they complain. In fact, they care more about the pigs than the man, and they get mad because of what Jesus has done regarding their pigs. And there's a parable being given here by Jesus in real life experience. By doing this, by noting who these people are who care more about the pigs, or rather say about their business. And that's the question to us. Do we care more about our business than we do about the humans who are attached to our business? They rushed down the steep bank into the lake where the Lord sent them there to drown. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this to the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. So pigs even have their own shepherds. They run and they tattle, of course. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And it tells us again about these particular people who are running out of the taverns, the houses, wherever they are, excitedly angry, being told that their business is being destroyed by Jesus, that their income is being threatened by Jesus. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region because he had expelled the demons from this man into the pigs, and now is ruining their business. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Non-Jews, most likely Greeks, were being transformed by the merciful power and love of Jesus that overpowers demons. He cares more about you than business. Well, God bless you. May this empower you to be courageous and not timid or fearful, but courageous in the Lord, because he's all that you fear, and the demons fear him. Go in peace. Hope to see you this Sunday at church. God bless you.